What's up, everyone? So yesterday I uploaded my NFL Week 3 DraftKings picks, and in this video I'm going to build upon that and go with some sleeper slash value plays. Okay, so the first player that I want to talk about is Marcus Mariota. At 5,900, this guy is a steal in my eyes. Now, I don't know how owned he's going to be. I expect some people are going to have him because he has such a good matchup against the weak Oakland Raiders defense. But I think that the majority of the average DFS players are going to take a look and want to spend a couple hundred more on Ryan Tannehill, because the average fan, I think, is going to perceive the Cleveland Browns as a better matchup for a quarterback than the Oakland Raiders. The Raiders are the worst defense in the NFL right now by a lot. They're giving up over 517 yards of offense right now to opposing teams, and no other team is even close to that. The closest team is New Orleans Saints right now, and they're only giving up 450 yards of offense. And then there's an even bigger drop-off after that to the Indianapolis Colts, and they're only giving up like 424 yards, I think it is. So the Raiders are kind of in the league of their own of how atrocious they are in defense. So I really like Marcus Mariota. Mariota has a tendency in the past to pick on bad defenses, and he really shreds them. Last season when he went into New Orleans and faced the Saints, and we know how bad the Saints defense is, he dropped 36 fantasy points. He threw for 4 touchdowns. And then he turns around a couple weeks later and then goes into Jacksonville and faces the Jaguars, and he drops 40 DraftKings points. He had 100 rushing yards, threw for 3 touchdowns. Now, rushing is something that we actually don't see Mariota do a ton of. They don't run a ton of designed runs for him, which is surprising for me. But anyway, so I like Mariota in this spot. The first few weeks of the season, he's played okay. He threw for 2 touchdowns and had 1 interception in both of those games. In Week 1, he faced the Minnesota Vikings. And honestly, if they didn't have all those stupid turnovers, the Titans probably could have won that game against the Vikings. Remember, though, that was Shaun Hill starting in that game. So I like Mariota in this spot, and I think he is such a good value. I think he's a sleeper and a value play. He may be higher owned than I'm expecting, but right now I think he's just such a good value play that you're going to have to consider him. So the next player that I want to talk about is exactly 1,000 DraftKings dollars cheaper than Marcus Mariota, and that is Theo Riddick at $4,900. So I like Theo Riddick in this spot. Now his price has gone up $900 in 2 weeks. Obviously in Week 1 he was $4,000, and then in Week 2 he was $4,300. So his price has gone up. He had a huge Week 1, dropping 27.8 DraftKings points, and I was heavily on him in Week 1. So that pick actually worked out really well for me. In Week 2, I kind of stayed away from him. He actually was playing Marcus Mariota's Titans. So I stayed away from him a little bit, and that ended up working out well for me there as well because he only put up 10.5 points. So this week, I'm back on him, and mainly due to the fact that he's just going to get such a workload increase because Amir Abdullah has been placed on injured reserve, unfortunately. So I really like Theo Riddick in the spot. I believe the other running back that I'm about to talk about, his name is Dwayne Washington. He is a guy that some people are scaring because they think that he's going to take some of Theo Riddick's workload. I haven't seen much out of Dwayne Washington, so I don't really know what to expect. So I'm just going to go off what I know, and I know that Theo Riddick has the potential to get in the end zone on the ground and through the air like he did in Week 1 against the Colts. So for that reason, I like him a lot in cash games and in big tournaments. So Travis Benjamin was a guy that I talked about in my video yesterday, but he is just too cheap not to talk about again. It is such a good play, and this is clearly not a sleeper play. This is 100% a value play. He is going to be really popular because of the production that he had last week, dropping over 30 points. And now there's reports saying that Antonio Gates may not play this weekend. I believe it's a hamstring injury. If Antonio Gates does not play, I'm going to be on Travis Benjamin and Melvin Gordon significantly more if Gates does not play, because Travis Benjamin is going to take away some of those targets that Gates would have gotten, and then Melvin Gordon is going to get even more red zone work if they're not going to have that big tight end to throw to. Now, I believe Hunter Henry is the backup tight end's name. I've heard good things about him. He actually didn't even drop a pass all of last season for Arkansas, I think it was. Don't quote me on that, but he's not a guy that I'm going to be heavily targeting because I think that the Chargers are just going to go with what they know, and they know that they can get the ball to Travis Benjamin, and they're going to try to get Melvin Gordon involved in the game a little bit, in the pass game, that is. So I like Travis Benjamin a lot, even if Gates plays, but if Gates doesn't play, I'm going to be all over this because he's just so cheap. So the next player that I want to talk about is Jeremy Maclin of the Kansas City Chiefs. And this is a guy who gets overlooked a lot. Anytime you think of a pass catcher for the Kansas City Chiefs, you instantly probably think of Travis Kelce. You think of Jamal Charles, or this season, a lot of people are thinking of Spencer Ware. But Jeremy Maclin is a guy who I've been looking at a lot this season, and mainly because he's been getting the targets. Right now, Jeremy Maclin is tied for 5th in the NFL in targets, and the main player that he is tied with in targets right now is Antonio Brown. Anytime you're getting the same amount of targets as Antonio Brown, you are getting a lot of looks. There's only 4 players in the NFL right now who have more targets, and that is Mike Evans, T.Y. Hilton, Jarvis Landry, and Jordan Matthews, and they all only have 1 or 2 more targets than them. So Maclin is right there in the league lead for targets, and that alone, at this price point, is a good reason why you're looking at him. Now, one thing that you need to know about Maclin is most receivers are probably hunting for 20-plus yard plays almost every time they touch the ball. The Maclin and the Chiefs are not like that. They're hunting for first downs. All they want to do is move the chains. If you look at these first 2 games, his receiving yards per catch are at 11.3 last week and 12.6 in week 1. All they want to do is move the chains. He did have a receiving touchdown in week 1 against the Chargers. And last week against the Houston Texans, he had 15 targets. If he gets that workload again this week, then he's going to put up quite a few points, in my opinion. So I like Maclin this week because of the price and because of the amount of looks he's getting. So Mohamed Sanu is the next guy that I want to talk about, and it's a really interesting play because I want to focus on this play in the primetime slate, which is the Sunday night game and the Monday night game. If you're going to play that slate, I like Mohamed Sanu a lot on that slate because right now, if you're taking a look at Falcons wide receiver targets right now, and this is a stat that I've talked about a lot already, but targets is just such a huge stat. But Julio Jones and Mohamed Sanu are both tied for the Falcons right now at 13 targets apiece. And in fact, if you take a look at some of the names around Mohamed Sanu on targets right now, it's really interesting. Alshon Jeffrey's on that list, Demaryius Thomas, Pierre Garçon. So some pretty big name wide receivers are around this 13 target mark, and I think a lot of people are going to be picking guys like Willie Snead. A lot of people are going to be picking obviously Julio and stuff like that. So I like Mohamed Sanu a lot. A lot of people are going to be going after Des Bryant on that too. So Sanu is probably not going to be a popular play, and I think he has a chance to have a decent game. I wouldn't expect him to have a huge game, and it's not like he's stupid cheap or anything like that. But Sanu is a guy that I was looking at on that primetime slate, and I figured since all these other picks were for the Sunday-only slate, I figured I'd bring him up. So the final player that I want to talk about is Jordan Reed. At $6,500, he is far from a value play, but I think quite a few people are going to overlook him or just 100% disregard him because of that price. And because of that very reason, I'm looking at him in big tournament lineups because he has a chance to blow up. Jordan Reed is a guy who was putting up monstrous numbers. He went on a stretch last year where he put up 30 points, 27 points, 36, 30, 17, 17, 6. So he finally had a bad game. But so far this year, he's been kind of consistent around the 12-point mark. He had 12 points last week against Dallas, and then week 1 against Pittsburgh, he had 13.4. He has yet to get into the end zone, but he's still getting his looks. He had 7 targets in week 2, 11 in week 1. So against this Giants team, I think that he's going to get even more double-digit target looks. If he doesn't, I still expect him to get quite a few red zone looks as long as the Redskins can actually get down to the red zone. So I like him. I'm not going to have a ton of them, but again, for the price, I think so many people are going to overlook him, and he's just not going to have a lot of ownership, and for that very reason is why I'm taking a look at him. Okay, so that's going to do it for me in this video. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more of these weekly. Be sure to follow me on Twitter. Quite a few of the players that I posted in yesterday's video, unfortunately, have been listed as questionable or haven't been practicing or all kinds of weird stuff. So be sure to follow me on Twitter if you want to stay updated on that, and I'll be sure to be tweeting out some of the players that I'm going to be looking at if a specific player cannot go. So thank you for tuning in. Later.